You guys see my handsome face?
We got you.
There we go.
Good day.
Good day, sir. Brian, how you doing?
Good, thanks, Randall.
William?
Pleasure to meet you.
Likewise. So,
Have you guys met before, William?
I've had the pleasure of meeting Randall at a conference in 2018, I think it was, in Arkansas with Graham Hancock. James.
yeah. Okay, that was it. I couldn't quite put my finger on where it was.
Yeah.
Earthkeepers.
America Before had not even come out. Graham had just finished writing that book. And joined us at the conference. You were there, of course, and Robert Schock. So it's a wonderful event.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't firmed up any thoughts yet, but I thought if we could somehow maybe coordinate a little bit where there could be some overlap, some some connections between our different presentations. And I'm kind of familiar with your work, Brian, not nearly as much as I'm going to be, though, because Robert has been filling me in a little bit. And William, I've gotten more familiar with your work since I met with Warren Sturry and Ryan. I'm talking about Ryan and
Ryan Tuberville, right?
Tuberville, yeah, of course, right.
Yeah, great guys.
Yeah, they are. And you're in Nashville, right?
I'm in Phoenix now, but I was in Nashville. Yeah.
Oh, you were in Nashville. Okay.
Yeah. There's very interesting links to the Grail Mysteries in Nashville.
Yeah.
Historically, very quickly in 1997, 98, I wrote a book about FDR and his quest for the Holy Grail.
Mm-hmm.
And along with Nicholas Roerich, a world famous Russian mystic and painter, they sent him to Mongolia looking for signs of the Second Coming and the secrets of the Grail. And there were 100 letters that were written by FDR Secretary of Agriculture, Henry Wallace, to her during the course of this expedition. And they pointed to Nashville as a site where they were going to return the Grail Mysteries.
Interesting.
And
I vaguely remember those stories. But obviously you're up on them more than I am at the moment, but I don't remember the Nashville connection.
Right. It's something that I turned over. Part of the mystery of the Grail involves the earliest Christian art that portrays Jesus performing the miracles of transmutation with a rod or a wand. And so that opened up the possibility, well, what if the Grail is in part a wand? It's different things. There's different components to the Grail.
Yes, yes, exactly.
And so what if part of it is a wand, and the wand is like an instrument, a tool, a technology for conducting something, like a symphony conductor's wand. And that then brings in the idea of a tone that transmutes one thing into another. That's essentially what the Grail is about, as I understand it: transmutation. Transmuting the human body into a higher celestial form, but also transforming the land, renewing the planet.
Yeah, perfect. See, and you said the kind of magic word that that's been my approach, is that the Grail is a symbol for a technology that essentially has been lost, but possibly preserved within certain enclaves for the centuries, but for the most part, lost. And, I was particularly attracted in the stories of the Grail about the wasteland, the recovery of the wasteland, the idea that humans and the land are linked, the king and the land are one. Yeah. When the king is debilitated, the land is debilitated. The Grail is the secret of the recovery of the wasteland, the recovery of the ailing king. And behind there is a technology of rejuvenation. And, I was particularly attracted in the stories of the Grail about the wasteland, the recovery of the wasteland, the idea that humans and the land are linked, the king and the land are one. Yeah. When the king is debilitated, the land is debilitated. The Grail is the secret of the recovery of the wasteland, the recovery of the ailing king. And behind there is a technology of rejuvenation. And so I've looked at it very much within the context of catastrophism. And I think that's where Brian's perspective would come in. Because I'm very much with you, Brian, the whole issue of catastrophism in Earth history and how that has affected the rise and fall of civilizations. And I think we could find some common ground there that we could kind of build a theme around. What are we looking at here, Robert? Are we looking at we're looking at a full weekend.
Yeah, it's Friday night, Saturday all day. We're gonna start a little bit later on Saturday because we have the building for the entire weekend.
So we would actually have time for like breakfast.
Yeah, well, they on site, they have a couple of restaurants, and of course you could stop by the slot machine on your way to speak.
Okay.
And they have a bowling alley, but the key thing is, like in Sedona, after 10 p.m., the hotels wanted to have a curfew on people hanging out and talking.
Yeah.
So at least at the casino, that's, as late as they want to stay up, and then their hotel room's right there.
And we have that room the entire night too. So
Yeah,
like if we want to hang out in that room, everybody can hang out in that room. Somebody wants to go, get a drink or something from the bar, they could go get one and bring it back to that room. We could all just hang out in there. If people want to talk and, the mysteries of the Grail till midnight, there's nobody running us out of there.
We like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the things. Where were we? We got run out of?
Boca Diablo.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I thought that would make an interesting chapter in the book, the various places we've been run out of.
But so on Saturday, I was thinking something like there could be from 10:30 in the morning till 10:30 at night. We were thinking starting a little bit later for those who are out later. And in the morning, we're thinking of doing some day trips because Montezuma's Castle and Montezuma's Well is right there next to the casino.
Day trip sounds rather long. Like
Well,
literally,
morning
they're
trip.
literally like 3 minutes up the road. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're you could walk there, like almost. Like they're very close by. So, if we have some early morning, we haven't ironed all that out, but yeah, we're thinking around starting around 10.
Sounds good. So, Brien, what do you want to dive into? What are you thinking? I imagine you've got an enormous mass of material like the rest of us. Have you thought or given much thought to where you would want to take your presentation?
Yeah, basically covering evidence of ancient machining technology in locations like Egypt and Peru and Bolivia and Turkey and Jordan and Lebanon and Easter Island. That's more or less what I focus my work on. Not understanding who did the work, but clearly understanding who did not do the work.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay, well, my focus has been on, my academic background is geology and astronomy. So I've been very keenly interested in the, geological events and how that would have affected things, how that would have affected our history. So I've particularly focused on catastrophism of all kinds. But which is obviously, I think we're all in agreement and aware of the fact that catastrophism has played an important role in the story of our civilization, and possibly or probably why a lot of this knowledge has been lost. The other thing, I've been very keenly interested in archaeoastronomy and how the ancient temple layouts, even urban complexes, cathedrals, etc., have all been oriented towards astronomical phenomena. And then the sacred geography, how they're linked across time and space. Clearly, and I'm sure you're going to be coming from the same position, that there seems like a coherent system that we can see at work around the entire planet. Is that essentially your perspective on it, Brien?
Yeah, basically. Of course, there's that circle that goes around the Earth at around 20 degrees, which has most of the major sacred sites on it. Going through Paracas, going through Peru, going through Giza, going through Mohenjo-Daro, and that kind of thing. So I think there's a lot of evidence of that, and of course the whole Younger Dryas thing, which we all know a lot about at this point.
Well, yeah, I'm sure that we'll come up with something where. I'm just thinking, come up with something where what we're each presenting kind of, this, we do what we did with was it in April, Robert, when we had that Sunday
Yeah,
where we had George Howard presenting, myself, Graham Hancock, and we brought Alan West in remotely. And there was a lot of overlap, but there was a lot of, I mean, we all kind of came to the catastrophist and younger dryas perspective from different angles. So if you were there for the whole day, I think you went away with a really solid understanding from these different perspectives. We didn't really spend a lot of time trying to coordinate what we did, but it just kind of came off that way. I think what we should do should kind of take the same approach, and I'm obviously willing to tailor whatever I present to complement what you guys are doing. I would certainly like to introduce some of what I'm learning about plasma technology and how that possibly provides an important insight into ancient technologies. There's a whole lot there to unpack, but I'm putting together a presentation, kind of an auxiliary presentation to the Holy Grail stuff, but it's just discussing this technology and how it works. And we had a meeting the other night with a group here near Atlanta. It's ex-Navy SEALs who have an amazing skill set of mechanical engineering background and physics background and so forth. And they are going to attempt to build a prototype under Malcolm's instruction. I don't know if that's going to be done by April, but it might be. There's many applications to the technology that I'm just beginning to wrap my head around. Interesting developments. We had a couple of weeks ago, I was in Florida with Malcolm and the CEO of the Strike Foundation. Her name is Samadhi. She flew in from Australia, and Mike Howtube, the CEO of Mike Robertson, the CEO of Howtube, was there, and he's going to be handling the live stream of this. Is that right, Robert?
yeah.
Have you talked to him? I think he's agreed to come on board to handle the technical end. Anyways, so we had a meeting with Com Carpentier, who is a French, I think his background is diplomacy. He was head of a think tank that serves as a liaison between the Indian government and the French government. So we had this Zoom meeting with him. He was in France, I believe, at the time. So anyways, it was an hour and maybe 15 minutes, and I think it's also been posted online now, so you can see it. But that has now been sort of kicked up to the higher echelons of the Indian government, and they're very interested. There is one prototype for a retrofit of an internal combustion engine based upon these plasma principles, and it sounds like the Indian government is going to go with it. They're seeing that the applications to the internal combustion engine could be far reaching, and they got 1.5 billion cars there. So this has just happened within the last, since the end of last week that they contacted them. So this is very interesting development. I mean, we could be seeing the return of something here. And what's really interesting about this is, there's been enough prototypes tested. I talked about this actually prematurely on Joe Rogan when I went on there. I thought I'd been given the green light, but in fact, I had been given a flashing yellow light. Slow down and proceed with caution. But I didn't quite understand that. I've been talking to Malcolm under the rose for about 7 years from his island laboratory in the Indian Ocean. And he was writing up his notes. He took him 7 years to write up his notes, which was the synopsis of something like 40 some years of research. So I went on the Rogan show and spoke about it, and didn't realize that it was going to launch kind of a firestorm of reaction. And last time I checked, it's had over 5 million views just on YouTube. But what it did was forced everything kind of out of the closet in a way, which is scared me at first. Like, I did what? But the good thing was that the plan was to bring it out anyway. So Malcolm, what he's doing, they've got patent applications for certain patent applications for certain applications of the technology, but the rest of it's all being open sourced as we speak. So you can go to the Strike Foundation and .earth. That's the website, strikefoundation.earth, and new material is being posted there as we speak. There'll be video clips showing the stage 1 prototype testing. This year could be very interesting developments. So it means that that this technology may come out of the realm of the esoteric into the realm of the actual. So I'm going to talk about that to the best of my ability and explain some of the principles behind it and this idea of the plasmoid unification model, which, and here's was the thing, how I ended up talking to Malcolm in the first place was that my friend and colleague Brad Young had been posting older videos that I had done, and even in, I think, going back into the 90s and early 2000s, were on sacred geometry. So I'm discussing the geometry and the importance of the sum of the internal angles of the various geometric shapes. Like, let's see if we can get, like, I don't know if you can see up there, the platonic solids, right? So we build those. We sell them online, we build them, and I've studied them pretty much in depth. And so I'd come up with this canon of numbers, which, and I'm sure you guys, I'm sure you're familiar with some of it, William. And probably both you guys are, these numbers that recur over and over and over again, right? And I'd kind of come to the point where, I was seeing these same repetitive numbers showing up in all kinds of traditions, in architecture, in gematria, where that, the language number substitution cipher, in many different forms. I'm seeing these same numbers and then finding them embedded in natural phenomena and astronomical phenomena, in the distances and the tempo of astronomical phenomena. There's the numbers embedded in nature. So I'm looking at all these numbers and going, well, okay, so this is way, way beyond a coincidence here, right? That we see these same numbers, 432, 864, 7920, the numbers associated with the precessional cycle, the 2,160 years of a platonic or cosmic month. Then at that point, I'm sitting there just mulling over what in the world can explain all these connections. So then I get this call, and it's coming from the Maldives, and this was 7 years ago. And so I began this ongoing conversation with Malcolm Bendel. And so basically, he sends me information, and he sends me this plasmoid unification model. Okay, so it's all built on those numbers, and it's all based on resonant frequencies, vibrations, which of course makes sense. I think we all kind of knew that had to be where it was headed. So he's created this unification model that links architecture, links the Kabbalah, links colors, sounds. This is not that great of a graphic, but I've got much better graphics. And so all of those sacred numbers are incorporated into this model. And it's built on, I don't know if you can actually see here, the Earth, Moon, Sun numbers, 864 for the Sun, 2160 for the Moon, 7920 for the Earth. And so he's come up with this whole system of using geometry to create electromagnetic fields that will contain these plasmas to the point where you can actually begin to generate energy. So it starts with a sphere, and then you collapse the sphere along its axis, so the North Pole meets the South Pole in the middle, and that gives you the torus. And the torus is the natural shape of plasmoids, of plasmas. So it begins with that, and then I've got a busted up model. The first model that he built is back here on the table there. And so he, I mean, if you go on, you'll be able to see, that's what I'd say, go online, look at some of the stuff that's up there. And, please, to any extent that you find something of interest, include it. Because the idea here, a lot of what he's done has been built upon the work of Nikola Tesla, Victor Schauberger, Walter Russell, Fleischmann and Pons, Bostic, even Robert Oppenheimer, who wrote papers on plasma energy and the potential there. So he's kind of built upon all of that. And what his goal is he acknowledges that this knowledge has been suppressed. When Tesla died, whoever it was, maybe the FBI swooped in. I don't know if they were around. There was an FBI enforcement. I don't remember the exact details, but Schauberger's work was classified. Tesla's work was classified. A lot of these others, if they weren't classified, they were just ignored. So the goal here is to put this information out open source to the world, so it can never be bottled up again. That's the basic game plan here. And as I'm beginning to understand it, it has such broad applications to everything for those of us that are in this community of studying our lost history. So my point is that if you guys look at it and you see anything, feel free. I mean, it's there, it's open. If you see anything in there that particularly interfaces with your own work, by all means, use it. And it's not my work, it's Malcolm's work, and he's reiterated to me over and over again, that's the idea. He wants to get this out there so it can never be suppressed ever again. And do you have any specific thoughts, Brien, on what and do you work with? I usually work with a PowerPoint show and put my stuff into a slideshow.
Yeah,
and
that's what I've done.
Yeah, okay. And I did watch a lot of your presentation that you did in Nashville. Now, what that had to have been a few years ago, right, William?
Oh, what, the one that Warren recorded?
I guess that was it. They had a recording, and we watched
Okay.
a good bit of it.
Did you? Okay, yeah, that would have been 2020, I think.
Okay, yeah, that seems about right. A few years ago.
Yeah.
So I'm going to rewatch that. So look for the. Yeah, I mean, I guess it was a year ago when I watched it, so I need to see it again.
Yeah. And then, as you're refining this, there's a lot about plasma beings as light beings and the Grail Mysteries.
There we go. See,
that's a real nice tie-in, and the
Mhm.
catastrophism.
Yeah.
The Gnostics spoke of the perfect light humans who existed before the time of the cataclysm and crossed
Mhm.
over. And the suggestion is they too are light beings of some kind, plasma beings. So preserving the plasma technologies and then bringing them back out at the appropriate time, which is now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we could definitely go in that direction.
So several things. I don't know why. It's kind of been blowing my mind. I've been on this curve for years, slowly ascending, and like within the last year or two, it's almost gone exponential. I don't know if you guys have had the same kind of experience, but I think going on Rogan and doing a lot of podcasts. I interviewed with Tucker Carlson last week. That's gone, or 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, and that just aired. When was it? A couple of days ago. The last, like I said, the last podcast I did on Joe's, I don't know what it's topped out at, but just YouTube alone, it's just hit 5 million views. So I don't know what it's done on Spotify. People always ask me about what's my take on UFOs. And I pretty much consistently avoided talking about that for a number of reasons. I don't really go into it. Finally, I was getting asked so much, well, what about UFOs? What's the deal with that? So I said, well, I think that there's 3 explanations. One, we're looking at, people seeing, the Air Force testing high performance experimental aircraft that look unusual. The second thing is natural phenomena that's possibly brought about by geophysical forces. I don't know if you know the work, say, I'm thinking of Paul Devereaux and several others who've come up with, because if you've got a fault line, you've got movement, you can, particularly if it's granitic, you can have piezoelectric effects, which can cause ionization in the atmosphere. Okay, so you're kind of familiar with that work. So I kind of went into that a little bit, and then I said the third thing is that, well, it's not what people think it is. Well, what is it? Well, it's not what people think it is. So I left it at that. And then there were people online getting like, I'd see right in caps like, well, what the hell is it then? But so I think you guys would be right along lines if you haven't even approached some of these ideas yourself. I'll go ahead and put it out there. So anyways, I would say, George Howard calls me the other day. He says, Lou Elizondo wants to talk to you. He's got some questions. And I thought, okay, I bet he's heard that. But my take is that, and I certainly don't exclude the possibility of there being extraterrestrial. But I think the other thing we need to consider is that perhaps some of the UFOs, which we now are calling unidentified aerial phenomena, which kind of can now encompass things more like along Paul Devereaux's work rather than something purely technological. But in any case, this has kind of been confirmed to me now that I've been learning about the plasma principles and seeing how the plasmoid technologies might actually be what is the technology that is being used. But to make a long story short, I think we should consider the idea that, first of all, that maybe we're not so much looking at aliens, but we're looking at ourselves. Because if you dive into the traditions, you find this over and over again. The tradition about the great cosmic world tree, and during the catastrophism, people climbed the world tree to escape the great flood and other things. And afterwards, one group of people came back down to earth, and the other group climbed higher up the tree and went to the sky. Our myths are quite literal. And if you take that into account, I think it opens up some interesting possibilities as to the UFO phenomena. And there's quite a bit more to say about that. But, you consider how far we've come in the technologically, industrially, scientifically in the last 300 years. And then you consider that our species has been around for conservatively a couple of 100,000 years, millennia, thousands of years of scientific or technological development could get lost in the noise of 250,000 years of history. And I think we should be very much open to that possibility. And if that is viable, then we have to next ask, well, what form would have an ancient civilization taken? What technologies would have they developed? What's their science? And you guys have probably seen some of the attacks on Ancient Apocalypse and on Graham Hancock coming from the establishment, the archaeological establishment. You guys seen any of that? I mean, it's pretty disgusting, really. But as you go through it, as I have in detail, you find out that there's nothing there. These guys have nothing. They have name calling, oh, Graham's a racist, a white supremacist. Oh, he's spinning conspiracy theories. Like anything outside the mainstream narrative, oh, you're spinning conspiracy theories. Well, I think those guys are about to get blown out of the water, to tell you the truth. I think what we're seeing there is almost an act of desperation.
Oh, it is definitely.
Yeah.
They can't explain how, they can't logically explain how the Great Pyramid was made. They can't explain the Serapeum boxes. They can't explain megalithic crew at all. They just say, no, it was done using bronze chisels. And it's like, no, that's their explanation still after all this time.
Well, it is, and so here's where it gets interesting. Like last night, I had a conversation with Malcolm for about 3 hours And then the other night when we were meeting with the Navy SEALs, he's basically describing one of the things he got into is how you would use this technology to cut and transport stones, which seemed, yeah, okay. I've had this suspicion. The specifics, though, I've not had any understanding of how the specifics would work. So he begins to explain to me, and that is something maybe I would try to learn more to bring into the conversation in April, which I think would be a pretty interesting dimension to get into. But like I said, I'm in the early stages of unpacking this information. But anyways, as this goes forward, I mean, if you guys want to, we can have several more conversations or as many as you want to refine this, I think, for maximum impact.
Yeah, well, I've got a
Sure.
really good big picture here and some direction, so thank you for that.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks for having a meeting here.
Pleasure.
Here's the new flyer. I got you and William on the front cover, Brian.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Thanks.
I'll get some video cut and
Okay,
we'll get all the links to you as well.
great.
Great.
Well, I will proceed on this basis then, and if we want to talk again, just let me know.
Okay.
Super.
Excellent.
Okay.
Good to see you and talk to you, William.
You too, Randall, Brian, Darren, Robert, always. Be well, guys. We'll talk soon.